Da 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 da. What's my good cheer? Welcome, everybody. Let's give YouTube a couple of minutes, get those notifications out. In the meantime, if you've never met me before, hi, I'm Cindy. I explore the inside and the outside. And if anybody pops in, one of my regulars, they usually don't pop in those first 2 minutes because they know that spiel. If you hang out with me, that spiel is there. And it is a spiel because I understand that I only have 5 seconds to catch your attention. But in that 5 seconds, we have enough time to feel somebody out, to get an idea whether it's in the voice, in the tone, if it's in that relatable sense of style. Sometimes maybe it's even in the decor, you find that comfort, you find that familiarity, or you're curious about something. I am very eclectic behind me, but it's important for people to, right, when they're scrolling through everything, to give everything, well, I'm not going to say a fair shot because we all have our taste and there's lots of things that we can just scroll right by, but there's also things that we should scroll right by. And I'm going to have to say, in all honesty, because my crew hangs out with me and because it's important for me to be genuine, right? For those of you who've hung out with me for any length of time, you know my poison of choice, right? My addiction, my coping mechanism, one of many throughout my life, because this is part of my personality in finding ways to cope depending on the stress levels, right? In what I'm dealing with at the moment. But I found myself for the past, it's got to be at least 2 weeks now, that I'm on Instagram and I'm coming across these slot machine shorts, right? People winning something and they're showing people, they have their own following. And I felt bad because I was in there and I was watching these hits, these little jackpots that were people were winning, and I was thinking to myself, Cindy, you shouldn't be watching these things, right? You're a recovering gambling addict. Like, you got to get yourself out of this, away from this. But the thing is, I was noticing in that I was spending more time in empathizing with these characters who have these Instagram huge millions. One guy is like got over 1 million. A couple of them got over 1 million subscribers, right, on their Instagram, and all they do is play slot machines. And they're doing 350, 500, $1,500 hits. Like every time they hit that button or pull that slot, that's what they're divvying out. But they're only putting out to TikTok, Instagram, these shorts, right, of them hitting the jackpots. So for myself, I find that very interesting because it's feeding into the idea that they're winners, right, when it comes to gambling. And if you don't pay attention, I call them characters, right? Because they're playing a role in that moment. They're playing the high roller. It was a role my father loved so much. For myself, it was calming to my system until I had to walk away from that machine. And then the stress was in that self sabotage, which was playing those machines to start with, where I would be scrambling to solve the problems as to how to put gas in the car, how to put groceries in the cupboard. What am I going to say to my husband? How am I going to explain? like not having money or even having to owe money, but you can't ask your husband for the credit card or for any money because, you make more money than him, right? And you're coming home and right, you should have a wallet, a purse full of money. And I didn't because I gambled it away. So I'm going to be coming off these videos right away. Um, but I found that I was actually studying these people and feeling very, very bad for them. Very, very sad. I pay attention and I was right. When they hit these big ones and then at the end they show how much money they won and everything. And at the end, you can just see the relief on their faces and in their systems. And sometimes they even vocalize, "Oh my goodness, that saved the day. Oh, I didn't know what we were going to do for the mortgage." Oh, right. And they make these little comments that slip out. Nobody's mentioned mortgage, but these little comments that signal that they have put a whole lot more money in than what they pull out. And also these $100,000 wins. Somebody won $1,000,000 and they say, "Oh my goodness, that gets us almost even." And they're so excited by that because you have to think if they did not hit that bonus, which was very likely that they would have walked on to a new machine or spent their last of their money and didn't have it, or because they were lowering their bets because they didn't have enough money going on. And I felt so absolutely terrible for them because I knew that these people are addicts and there is no winners, right? Uh, except for the casino. And I think even then, right? Because they are the instigators of those problems, right? You get what you give. And even in that idea, right? Yes, it's business, but that business is causing humans problems, right? You can't mess with the humans without having it show up in your life negatively somehow. And that's a truth. And I was feeling so bad for these people because you could just see the relief of the stress that, right? Because they're portraying to their audience. They're not telling their audience how much money they're losing. Every once in a while, you can see on their face or in those small expressions of what's going on. "Oh my goodness, that almost makes us even. Oh my goodness, that saved the day. Oh wow, I didn't know." Right? "Oh my goodness, that almost gets us out of the hole." Right? And so these comments signal that they are losing. It's just their audience doesn't see they're losing. And that's really sad because that promotes the imposter syndrome, right? Because you're lying to your audience, you're not being genuine in that, right? And I'm not going to say not everybody does that in this genre of shorts, right? Because I do know one character who well, he's a pessimist on a good day. He's a very much a pessimist on a good day, but he shows his loses, his losses. He expresses what a loser, and right, and it's bad because I know how I spoke about myself in calling myself a loser, and I was a liar, and I was a juggler in my bills, and I was an instigator and a self-sabotager even in my own marriage, because in the end my marriage failed me. And even though it might not have been the sole reason as to why the marriage fell apart, it was a deciding factor 100%, right? And so for the past 2 weeks, and I wanted to fess up yesterday, and I meant to mention it in my chatters live because they have been with me for over 10 years, some of these people. If you haven't been to my Sunday show, that's a really good show. It's comfortable, it's easy, it's not heavy into the topics, right? But also at the same time, we get to meet other sensitives, right? We get to hang out with other people who are just living quiet lives, but good lives, productive lives, care caregiving lives, and they care about me, right? In that caregiving, they give me every Sunday, and they've been giving me every Sunday for almost a decade now. So grateful. But if you want to come out, hang out with us on Sunday night, come in and say hi, right? Every once in a while, we get a new one into the Sunday night. It's a totally different show. Like I said, we try and keep it light in on Sunday nights, and we run it for an hour and a half, right? And 7:30 Central. If you want to hang out, check it out. If you just want to hang out in the background and check it out, you're welcome to do that too, right? And you might find like Sunday nights might be a good thing. If nothing else, Christmas Eve, you guys. I haven't done my community post yet, and I'll put that on my to-do list too right now so I don't forget that. But Christmas Eve, 7:30 Central, we go live for Christmas Eve. It's a great way to spend a quiet evening, especially if you do spend most of your evenings quiet. You don't have plans, you're not going out, you don't have family, you're laid up for whatever reason, right? Still a good way to come in and still, I'm not going to even say celebrate because all we're doing is sitting and talking. Sometimes I have a cocktail, sometimes I just have a cup of coffee, right? But then you guys get to hang out with me as I open up my Christmas stocking that my sister does for me every year. But the idea is to connect. The idea is to be social in some fashion in your life. It's about committing to making that movement. Baby steps, you guys. You know, lots of us are introverts. I was even having this conversation with my sister yesterday. And she says, Cindy, don't you get lonely just hanging with yourself? And I says, these past half a dozen years, I didn't go into full explanation, but the explanation is for the past half a dozen years, it's really been the first time in my life where my only priority is to take care of me and to create the best life for myself as I possibly can, right? And my brand, I have my YouTube channel. I'm not lonely. I'm here socializing, connecting, right? And sometimes people come in and hang out with me. And sometimes I'm sitting here and I'm just yapping away at myself, but I am good that way, right? I'm good that way because I'm doing this namely for myself, right? And I'm always practicing my craft in that. And you never know, it might serve in just some silly conversation that I'm having that might impact somebody in a way that they might make some change for themselves in their own life because change is so important. And that's the thing about getting together here on Christmas Eve is because we commit to that one night, and it's not like we're going out, it's not like we're rubbing shoulders with that narcissistic brother-in-law, or right, getting into family squabbles, and right, we're actually just hanging out. We're just spending time. We're being social, practicing the craft of being social because lots of people out there are not social, right? I have had a curious upbringing, and I've had a curious adventure of a life that has forced me into positions where, right, I can't help but be seen. I was 311 pounds at my maximum weight. So there was never an opportunity to physically be invisible, even though I tried. And, emotionally and mentally, maybe I managed okay. But as I grew into my adulthood and I really got a good understanding about, I'm going to live my life, I'm going to create the best life for myself as I possibly can. I said, I'm going to be here for 80 years. I said, this is what I said, like 16 years old, 80 years old. That's ready to be dead. And that was like way, way beyond. Right. And now I'm shooting for 114 years, and there's a possibility that I might do it. People do it now all the time. This is innovation. This is movement forward. And we don't just do it individually, but we're doing it as a whole. And I sure would love to be here in 20 years and see how amazing. Hello, Kathy. Hello, thank you. I would sure love to be here in 20 years and see how much change has come about. You guys, just go back in the past 20 years and see how far we have come, right? It's introducing that change, and that change is amazing because it comes in slowly. It's coming in faster and faster because we expect ourselves to keep pace with technology and innovation and AI learning. But I think we have to train that to slow its pace down because we're moving so fast, right? We doubled in our knowledge in 1 year. I was just having this conversation with my nephew. I bumped into him and at the store, and then we walked home and we stopped off. He bought me dinner, and we were having this conversation, right? That things are moving so fast, but too fast, right? Too fast. And we as humans are the ones that are going to have to make that snap, that choice, that decision, and that action to slow ourselves down, right? Because technology is not going to slow down because it's going to teach itself. It's probably teaching itself right now. And how are we to keep up with that, right? The human brain is smaller, right, than when we were Neanderthals. So we don't have any more space in there, right? Everything is going to be like our compacted files in our personal computers and our laptops and stuff, right? So I don't know if we're ready for that, or if it's just going to be too much, right? That it's just too much. And a lot of people are turning off of it. A lot of people are not even connected. I thought we had a shooting chance of getting people pulled into AI learning when COVID hit, and we all had to be on our computers and be on Zoom and stuff. Otherwise, you wouldn't see your grandkids or your kids and stuff, right? But I haven't kept up on that, and I don't see that increase in the mature, right? In the baby boomers online, right? There's a few of us, but they're right when you compare it to the other generations. And oh my goodness, those teenage kids, they're just rocking their life. And just like those video slots that, did you hear what I was saying before about that gambling, that I was watching those shorts with those video slot machines, and I was feeling bad because I felt I was being addicted to the video slot machines. But what I had discovered when I was actually contemplating it was in putting myself in that person's shoes, because I used to be that gambler and I knew how those people felt, but I didn't have the pressure of a following. So I'm trying to think, like these people are going out there because now this is their content every day. So they're finding ways to drum up this money so that they can do one jackpot, right? Win and make that video for the day and then lose all that money 5 minutes later because, right, they're trying to make more videos and stuff. It's coming to an end. It happened to me here on my computer, and then they have that button where you could just say, don't suggest this to me, not interested. So I hit all those. It took about a week, but as long as you don't go into them, they don't suggest them to you anymore. So we're going to see if I can do that, or if there's a feature in my Instagram. I've never had to block a channel or anything, but I think I better block all those because my recovery in that addiction to gambling, it right, it almost destroyed me, in all truth. And not only did it destroy um uh, my marriage, right? And I'm like I said, I'm not putting the whole blame of the marriage falling apart on the gambling, but it contributed 100%. But I lost a job because of the gambling too, and I totally forgot about that. Oh my goodness. Right? We all have to cope with life, and that's true. And no matter what people say, everybody is coping. How they're coping, some people go to the gym and they say, "Look how healthy I am." But they're spending 6 hours in the gym building their muscles, but not as something to stay healthy, but because that's their addiction, right? Some people are into extreme sports, right? Things that you wouldn't think that are addictions, like house cleaning, right? These become obsessive behaviors that we do just to keep the system calm. Oh my goodness. Can you imagine? My sister does that. She doesn't do it for money, though. Thank goodness. My youngest sister, I have two sisters. They that still gamble. One is social, so I don't even consider her a gambler, but I do have two sisters who do gamble. And I right? They know. And every time they see me, I tell them, right? I mention I don't gamble anymore. And I always say, I'm so proud of myself. I don't gamble anymore. And when I see something, or something's too expensive in the store, and I says, I'll buy that now, but I can't imagine, that I would have bought that, 10 years ago, because I was so into putting money into a machine that I wasn't taking care of anything else financially, right? But my sister, she does the poker star. She likes to play poker. Um, I used to do the poker stars too at home, but you're right, 100%. I didn't gamble money on the poker stars, but I would go into the tournament and I would win money, and then I would go into regular poker games and I would use that money as play money. And yeah, that I'm so grateful. Like nothing, no video games, like no Tetris, no Space Invaders, no Nintendo, nothing like that. No gambling, no, right? There's lots of those. Even those kids' games, when you pick up the eggs and stuff like that. I see the advertising for them where some ladies picking up eggs and building a farm, and that's an addiction. And we're putting our kids in those addictions even before they've had a shot, right? And so what happens to the kids is they sit in front of the computers or on their phones all day, right? In my day and age, mom would say, go outside and play. And you go outside and climb trees. Now you tell the kids to go outside and play. They grab their phone and they go sit out in a lawn chair in the backyard, right? It's the government and the medical system and the health, I would say the health system, because it would be emotional and mental issues that would come from that. Um, they've got to be aware, right? They got to be aware. There's so much benefits, right? So much benefits, but you have to, like anything else, you have to be healthy about it. You have to be selective about the content, right? For me, I'm all about the mindset. I'm all about moving forward, motivation, inspiration. But then I have my metal detecting videos and I have my bottle digging videos. What else do I watch? Um, oh, there's a lady who has a farm. I have a clever cowgirl, I think they call her. And but it's the views, it's the mother nature that I get hooked on. Like that's why I quite often I like the metal detecting videos, because they're digging in the dirt and they're in the forest and the beautiful landscapes and the sounds of the forest, right? So it gets me close to nature in a kind of virtual way when I can't connect, right? When going outside because I'm so involved in what I'm doing. But even for me, I am online, right? A lot. I am online a lot, but I feel that I'm in catch up, right? Like, not catch up, fries. Like, I'm catching up, right? Like, I feel like I'm so far behind in something, and because, I feel that I'm something, right? I feel something, and it's in those difficulties of siphoning what is for me, what is for storing for in those conversations when I can serve, and what is too much. What is too much, right? So it's having a good discernment, and it's something that I am learning. It is a process. I put my foot in my mouth all the time, but I also, right, I keep in mind all the time, it is in the intent. It always is with good intent, right? But yeah, but that gambling in the living room, oh my goodness. My dad was a compulsive gambler, but he was very sick, but he managed to get down to the casino. Like, we have casinos in the city, right? And at that time, they didn't have VLTs, video lottery terminals. He would have loved those. Oh my goodness, we would have been in big doo doo for sure. Um, but my dad loved the loved the casinos. But if he had lived long enough, and it wasn't too long, it was maybe 5 years, maybe five or 6 years maximum. And those machines, if he had lived a little bit longer, he would have loved those machines. He would have gone, right? But it's not healthy for us. And epigenetically, it's so attached to my family, the gambling, right? Because it's socially acceptable, because it's everywhere. It's in the bars, it's in the corner stores, right? You go to Vegas and Reno and casinos downtown, Friday night poker games, um, pull tabs, right? That it's not good, right? And because it's socially acceptable, right? Because you get to be the big shot if you win, right? Um, and they don't look at gambling as an addiction as bad, like heroin or alcohol or prescription pills and stuff. There's so many. It doesn't matter what it is. If it messes with your system, if it messes with your life, you got to get off of it if you can, right? But we all need something. It's like at Christmas time when we all make our New Year's resolutions, right? And then January 1st, right? We're on our diet and we're giving her. But unless you have a new addiction to replace the old addiction, you're going to fail, right? And that's why it's important to exercise, right? Because the idea is maybe you'll get addicted to the exercise, right? And is that a good thing? It's just switching from one addiction to another. But sometimes all we need is that change, right? Because if that movement is noticed, then something else will come up behind us and move us a little bit more. And then maybe that's enough to get us over that hump, right? I I don't know. I am not an expert in addictions and only understanding my own addictions, my own experiences with my own addictions. And it's enough to make me an expert 100%. And I do have that intent. I have a course that I'm supposed to be taking out of the Simon Fraser University, right? On addictions. But I feel so bad about taking a course when I can't even get off the pink ice donuts with the sprinkles, right? And how would that guilt and shame, because that's my steering wheel, how would that impact me as I'm moving forward in a course? It would kind of make it like I've got my foot on the gas and I've got my foot on the brake at the same time. And I know myself well enough to know that I would feel like a liar if I took that addictions course and I haven't resolved my own addictions with food. Mind you, I'm trying a new thing, you guys, and I'm down 5 pounds in about 10 days, and I'm not dieting. The only thing I'm doing is I'm stopping eating at 8 o'clock at night, and the weight's coming off. I always knew. I never tried this before. I never gave myself, I'm not that person to punish, right? Anytime, like even dieting is like punishment because that was used as punishment when I was a kid, right? And I always felt like I was being punished when there were no second helpings, or everybody was getting chocolate bars and potato chips and there was nothing for Cindy, right? Wheat germ, go have a bowl of wheat germ. Right? And so I have to be kind of creative in the way that I trick myself, right? In when I'm being on diets. My sister's always telling me, Cindy, you got to go on the keto with me, right? You can have cheesecake. And she's telling you, I baked bread today, Cindy. Come and try my bread. Come and try my brownies. And it's all keto, right? But I couldn't eat like that because it's too expensive, right? My income isn't inflatable enough because you have to go with gluten-free flour and more expensive ingredients, right? And meat is very, very expensive. And I eat meat. I make sure I get my protein every day, but it's like eggs, right? Eggs and sausages and sometimes pork cubes that I shake and bake and I make Chinese food with, right? That I have to be creative again in how I get my proteins, right? When I was a kid, my dad would mix these protein drinks that weren't like strawberry milkshakes and chocolate milkshakes like they are Now, right? You go in and you spend $60 and you get this big container of protein and you just mix it with your milk and it tastes like strawberry milkshake or chocolate milkshake. No, this one that I took as a kid, my dad would take a big scoop out of it, out of the container, and the only way I could even think to get it down was in the orange juice because the orange juice was so sweet. But it was like drinking um, uh, a jar of aspirin that's been all ground up to a dust. And you know what an aspirin tastes like when you bite into it, right? It very metallic-y, very bitter. Oh, it was awful. Yeah, I'll never forget that stuff. And I drank that stuff every day. My dad was big on the health foods, right? But for his own health, but because I was overweight, I was always right eating the same foods as he was eating, except for the meat because I was never a meat eater. The best I could do is when my dad would take me out on those dinner dates. He used to take me out on dinner dates. I'd do the veal cutlets, right? I'd have veal cutlets and but other than that, no, I don't want to recognize my meat as an animal, right? I don't want to see veins. I don't want to see blood. I don't want to see blubber. I don't want to see any of that stuff because my system cannot handle that. I would have made an amazing vegan, but that's not the way that I was brought up. And then again, I think the cost of vegetable. And that's my, what do you call that? My poverty mindset, right? It's not an abundant mindset to think that way. But again, I figure it out creatively, right? Creatively. I buy big bags of coleslaw, right? Because you can buy it in the bag. And I use that for soup and I make coleslaw and I make sure I'm eating that cabbage and getting the vegetables in my system. I haven't done it lately. I should go get a bag of coleslaw. I got a cabbage in my fridge. I like the halapchis. I love cabbage. It's my favorite vegetable is cabbage. And I used to hate cabbage. I used to hate all vegetables when I was a kid, but it was again, it was that idea that I was being punished, right? And and I just couldn't eat vegetables. Definitely couldn't eat cooked vegetables except for potatoes were the only things that I could eat when it came to vegetables. And as an adult, I love vegetables. There are some vegetables I prefer not to have, but there's so many vegetables out there and choices, right? But yeah, I don't know. Talking about food, but oh yeah, because I said that 8 o'clock at night, I stopped eating, and I've been doing that for about 10 days now, and I've lost 5 pounds naturally. Right, 5 o'clock. I'm not cutting the drinking out if I want coffee or if I want juice or whatever I want. Right, when it comes to the fluids, but yeah, when it comes to eating. 8 o'clock, I am I am done. The thing is, when I go to bed, I have an empty stomach, and because of the gastric bypass that I have stomach acids going all the time. So I always have to make sure that I take a little bite of I don't have to take a whole one, but a little bite of a Rolade, right? So that I don't get that burning in my stomach from the acids. I don't know why the acids just keep going. They're always digesting. Those acids are always going on. But I notice if there's no food in there, they'll start eating the inside of my stomach. This is the way I think anyway, and I don't want to end up with any ulcers or anything like that, right? I do pay attention to my health, right? But it's in those small adjustments and it's being creative, right? It's being creative and like I said, I have no idea where it's not even a diet. It's just cutting off the food intake at 8 o'clock. You're done, right? Most people are done eating at 8 o'clock anyway, unless it's like a little bedtime snack or something. But for me, it's just getting started. I do my live show at 9 o'clock, and then I'm eating dinner at 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. I'm eating dinner, and then I'm going to bed. And then instead, my body is digesting food all night rather than refurbishing, right? Get me ready for the next day. I like the morning when I first get up. I like beating my alarm clock. I always wake up like 2 or 3 minutes before my alarm clock goes off, and I'm ready to go. I'm ready to start my day, right? Like everybody else, I have my little morning routine. Right? Today I went thrifting because I'm running. You won't notice to look at my behind me because this wall hasn't changed, because this is some of my favorite stuff, and it's going to have to go, right? If I hit the road, if I do the RV life, I can't take any of this with me, right? There won't be any space, right? I don't know any RVer who does doodads and ornaments all over the place, because you drive down the highway, they'll just be all smashed on the floor and everything. So I think now, while I'm not in a rush for that money, well, I'm always in a rush for money, but to always have that money trickling in, it's going to have to go anyway. I'm going to list it, and when it leaves, right? And that will keep the household running. And then when I'm ready to leave, then I'm not selling it for pennies at a garage sale, and I'm not giving it away. And I'll know exactly what I want to keep. If at all possible, I want to keep my tree pictures. If at all possible, I want to keep those. I don't know where I would put them in an RV. But right, it's in that being creative that we figure things out, right? We figure things out. I'm not I love them, but I'm not so attached to them that when the day is for them to go, right? For something better, right? That I won't have a problem with that. But I went thrifting tonight looking for stock. I didn't find anything except stickers. My sister sells stickers. So I found a package. I had a bunch of little packages of stickers, like the ones with the teachers would put stickers on your work when you handed in your work, with ducks and stuff like that from the 60s, 70s, 80s. So I found one of those for her. And then I stopped off and I grabbed myself a cup of coffee. I was going to walk home, but I didn't. I took a bus. When I got off, I popped into the store. There was my nephew. Then I hung out with him as he did a little grocery shopping, and we chit chatted. I like chatting with my nephew. Um, um, my sisters, none of them have woken up to these ideas, but my nephew, right, is great for conversations, and so is one of my both of my nieces are, but one of my nieces doesn't go deep, but the other one, yeah, 100%, right? We're all different in what we're contributing, right, and what we're moving towards. And it's kind of nice that we respect each other in that, but also at the same time we can bounce ideas off of each other in our conversation, and again in practicing the craft of being social, right? Because um right, it's important that we stay social, that we find a way to connect in some kind of community. uh Physically, I'm always moving towards different things that I'm interested in. That's the thing, though, it's got to be something that I'm interested in, something that I love, right? And I don't know, we're going to move into something, but what it is, I don't know. I'm just waiting for those marching orders and then off I go. Okay, you guys, let's just grab a card. I'm babbling away here. We're just going to it for a couple of minutes if you've never hung out with me before. 54 powerful words. They're just powerful words, but they're just powerful words, right? And each word can impact us. And, for myself, I'll pull a card and that will be my word for the day, and I'll just pay attention how that word comes across my path, whether an experience, a conversation, maybe it's an article or a post or something that I'm reading, and then just take note of it and see if there's something that we can do in working that word into our life, even for just that day, because sometimes it's just what we need just in that moment, right? And then you can just store it away for a rainy day. A lot of that. I have a lot of that. I have shelves and shelves. It's like one of those libraries, Acropolis, right? The Acropolis, wasn't that the library in Greece? Was it Greece? Yeah, when they where they kept all the scrolls and stuff and then it got burnt down. I still don't think. I think they would be smart enough to know that somebody might want to come in, start a war, attack, destroy, burn it up, right? That would be my first thought. If you're bringing every important document, every writing, every philosopher's thought, and you're bringing every important work into the Acropolis, like, don't you think you would want to squirrel it away, at least squirrel some of it away, because you know that somebody's going to come in and raid it or destroy it, right? Especially in those days of the Romans, right? There was always stuff going on that way. It just doesn't make sense to me, right? That's an old conspiracy theory going all the way back, isn't it? Yeah, that those works that they dig under that Acropolis, they'll come into tunnels, just like they found the tunnels in the pyramids, and you go through those tunnels and then opens up into a big cavern, and there's all the scrolls. There are all the works that, right, that will set us straight, right? That will dictate, our future, because we'll better understand our past, right? How long have we been writing now for? 3,000 years, right? That since we've been writing. They actually found a place, was it in Turkey, where they found another well, they knew it was writing, but they weren't able to decipher it, but now they've been able to decipher it because they matched it up, um, um, not like the Rosetta Stone a little bit, but they compared it to these little clay blocks that they had found, and they were just matching up different names and stuff that they were able to recognize because of the patterning. And a lot of that stuff computers are doing now, right? It's not like translators, right? That's a lost career for sure. They just throw that into the database and the computer will spit it out in 2 minutes. Okay, you guys, let's grab a card here. Just go into it for a couple of minutes and then I'm calling it a night. Oh, what a beautiful word. First thing that comes into my mind, grace. Wow. A story is not coming to my mind. So, grace swoops in to make the impossible possible, right? When we give up, when we're at the very end of that rope, that we know that we can't hold on anymore, and there is still like a mile down to the bottom of the canyon, right? And you're holding on to that rope and you know you're going to let go and your whole life is, right? Lots of times I have gotten to the point where I just didn't know what I was going to do, right? A lot of that was in my own instigation, in my own compulsions, in my gambling habits and stuff, that I became my worst enemy in that. And, it's funny because I've always, even when I wasn't woke to any of these ideas, I always considered myself very kind to myself. I always felt I was a really good defender of myself. Oh my goodness, I know, Grace. I got the story. I got the story. I always thought I was a good defender of myself, looking back at my life, right? Yes, I coped. Yes, I got through. Did I get through unscathed? No. But I don't think anybody does, right? And these are our badge of honors. Sometimes they're badges that we can utilize, that they become gifts and stuff, right? But when I say here, grace swoops in to make the impossible, right, possible. You're just at the end of your rope. You don't know what you're going to do anymore. And just all of a sudden, right, that miracle swoops in and gives you a chance to make a different choice, or it just comes in, and that person comes in with the perfect opportunity that will help to resolve, whether it's a money issue, or you needed help moving, or you had no place to live. And that opportunity, that happens to me all all the time. All the time that happens to me. And I think, oh my goodness, I got no milk in the fridge. Okay, we need milk. The next thing, right? Some amazing little piece of grace comes into my life, and that's just the little one. But here's the big one. When COVID shut the world down. It shut my city down, right? Completely. When that happened, it gave me exactly 2 months. I wasn't able to gamble for 2 months. And that was all I needed. Remember what I said? Sometimes you just need, right? It just gives you what you need in that moment to get you over that hump. And that grace was the miracle of COVID. Isn't that strange that COVID saved my life? Kind of literally, right? And, you know, grace swoops in to make the impossible. The impossible. I don't know how many times, every single time I gambled for 20 years, every night going home crying my eyes out. It was very rare that I hit a bag and made it home with the money. So those days were very rare. Most of the time, I was completely 100% so stressed out that I couldn't think. And I was, like I said, I was lying to my husband. I was covering my tracks. I wasn't spending any time with him because all my time was spent in front of the machines. I wasn't being responsible in my job, in starting work when I was, right, supposed to start work. Oh, do you need me yet? No, it's still slow. Well, of course they're going to say it's still slow because they're going to make more money if I'm not on the floor, right? So I was just sacrificing hours at work and my tip money at work. My life did not feel like there was an out in that, because I had done it for so long. And after a while, because I was self sabotaging and gambling to start with, that I added all this other crap into my life, the lying and the avoiding, the questions as to where my money was. My husband knew very well that I was gambling, right? He knew very well that I was gambling. He didn't know to the extent that I was gambling, but he knew that I was gambling. And I didn't think. I cried every night, please, I don't want to gamble anymore. This is the last time I'm gambling. And then I get $20 bill somewheres along the line. So I'm going to turn this 20 into 100. Then I'll be able to pay my bill, or I'll be able to get my groceries, right? But that COVID, it shut us down. And for lots of people, right? I would like to think that lots of people took that opportunity. There were lots of new businesses, lots of startups and stuff going on. There was lots going good at that time when we got shut down. There were lots of people who were totally pooped in their jobs, totally disillusioned, so begged that they had no hope, no energy, no lust for life anymore, and just being able to have a couple of months of being locked up in their house, that was like vacation, right? So I suspect that for lots of people, that was just what the world needed. And, yes, it was a terrible thing for business. It was terrible in the lives that were lost and the families that had to come to terms with it. But for some of us, that was grace. For myself, that was the biggest miracle. No, it wasn't, right? Having the gastric bypass was my grace, was my miracle. And that too just walked into my life. I didn't look for that operation. I just had a doctor who cared, right? And I'm surprised that he offered me up an opportunity to maybe have that operation, because he was a yogi. He would just always say, Cindy, go for a walk. Cindy, go meditate, right? I never get prescriptions out of him, right? I never asked for prescriptions ever, except I think I said, "Give me something that makes me happy." When my marriage fell apart, yeah, for a couple of days, and then that was it. I've never been one for pills. I just much rather just deal with it, just delve into it, revel in the sadness if that's what I've got to do, right? But yeah, miracles. That's what grace is, right? And those miracles always come when you least expect it. They always come when you most need it. And they most come when you appreciate it. Yeah. I'm always open to miracles. I'm always open to the grace in my life, but also at the same time, I recognize every day, right? And it's something I never did before. And I think that's pretty amazing that I can recognize the grace that comes into my life in little ways, like my nephew bumping into my nephew tonight. We had a beautiful little chit chat, and, to be able to talk to people in person, and we took me to dinner, and I thought, oh, is that ever nice? And he lives in the same building as I do, right? But he's just as isolated in what he's doing as I am. It's just when we bump in, we rub each other well. And we all should be rubbing each other well. And it's, part of my mission statement, so that we're able to better get along with each other, right? But we got to start with ourselves. We really do got to start with ourselves. But like I said, right? Sometimes we are our worst enemies, right? Sometimes we think we're our best cheerleaders, our best bodyguards, right? And it's not always true. If you really pay attention, right? You can see the little things that we do to trip ourselves up on a daily basis, right? Because, well, it makes being bored fun, right? You always have to have a problem to resolve. I know that's the case with me. Okay, you guys, that's all I've got for you tonight. Kathy, thank you so much for coming in and hanging out with me tonight. The guys haven't been in here all week, and I've been in here all by myself. Well, it's only so Monday. I'm just starting. I'm just starting my week, and I'm already complaining. Nobody's in here hanging out with me, right? But Kathy, thank you so much for kind of hanging out with me. I much appreciate it, especially when you hung out with me last night for an hour and a half. That was super nice. Thank you so much for giving me that time. I'm sending you a whole bunch back, and I'm picking up my box. We're working on that little box, and I'm sending your stuff out. It's sitting right here, and I'm staring at it. You're gonna have your own set of cards. I hope you pull a card every day and see, right, how it impacts your life in little ways. Okay, you guys, that's my good chair, and we'll see you tomorrow.